Welcome to the water level section of the AGM. We've got a report here for you. Be done tag team between me and Vince Barton. We are part of the Water Levels Committee and got a lot to share with you here. Basically, we're going to be talking about a tale of three seasons. It's interesting, 2019, 20, and 21. From the sublime to the ridiculous. I'm not sure. High water now is sublime, believe it or not. In any case, moving forward, if you look in the top left-hand corner of the screen, back mid-June 2019, we were at 5.68 feet. That was the ultimate peak we've ever seen on the river. And that's the feet above low water datum, which is called zero. It's the chart reference. So, in any case, for the AGM, the water had finally gone down enough that we could actually not be wet in the parking lot. We were at 5 feet above chart datum. The next year, at the AGM 2020, which is our first Zoom AGM, we were only 3 feet above the low water datum. And then the following year, which is now, we've made it all the way up to 2 feet. So we're rising. We're trying to get back to a peak here. Now, I got this picture from one of our members, Dave McWilliam, back in March. This is what the bay in front of his cottage looked like on the Bateau Channel. You know, he was offering free dockage for anyone all spring that wanted to use his facility. Now, you see that dock in front of you, all right? In the next picture, this is from 2019. See in the red arrow blob balloon there? That's that same dock. It was totally awash with water. So another couple of 2019 pictures. Turn it over to Vince here.
Yeah, so this is a picture I took from my front porch this spring. And for some kind of scale, the staving boards on the dock there are a full 4 foot long, and the bottoms of them are out of the water. So the water was completely below our dock this spring. It's up a little higher now, but that was around the end of May. So then for comparison's sake, if we jump to the next one, this was back in 2019. So those 4 foot staving boards were completely covered. We have some kids sitting in the water on top of the dock. My daughter particularly enjoyed swimming in the water on the dock during that summer. So it's a lot different this year.
Thank you, Vince. Now, moving ahead, first a satellite view of another dock of retiring board member Jonesy, Brian Jones. This is the aerial view of his nice long dock. There you see his boats parked out in the end, and there's a boat in the middle there. In any case, well, that was a satellite view from last year. Here's what it looks like today. We're calling it Jones's Sand Beach Dock. There isn't much more water there than this picture that was taken a couple of months ago. But I heard a report that he's actually able, if he pulls his outdrive up, to dock his 20-foot boat T across the end of the dock. So in any case, go visit Jonesy, bring your kids, have them bring their sand beach toys, and I'll have a ball. Okay, now on to the water level technical stuff. We drew up this simple water balance. Just talk about where the water comes from. We all know where it goes. It goes out to the ocean. But if you look in the bottom left corner, you see item 1 down there, the big arrow. That's the output of all the Great Lakes arriving in Lake Ontario, in the river, from Lake Erie. It goes over Niagara Falls. So that's the output of the entire Great Lakes coming into Lake Ontario, trying to make its way to the ocean. Okay, so that's source number 1. Number 2, precipitation. As we've learned, precipitation is the big factor for most years. Rain, snow, sleet, hail, all kinds of stuff, snowpack, late melt, whatever. But all of that stuff, including water that goes down the little creek behind my house here in Ithaca, New York, ends up in the Lake Ontario basin. And then the third source, and it's a major one, is from the Ottawa River. You see that yellow area up here in the center of the screen, right in here. Ottawa River Basin is huge. Water ends up in the Ottawa River in the springtime. Doesn't run big time all year, but in the spring it really runs. And you know, the ice flows. You see the picture on the left. Well, ice flows down in and eventually melts. In 2019, believe it or not, the output of the Ottawa River was greater than all of the water coming from the Great Lakes over Niagara Falls. Hard to believe, but that's why things got so bad, because all this water arrived at one time. Okay, Vince, why don't you talk about kind of a summary of what goes on with these three major sources of water for our...
Yeah, thanks, Ken. So we wanted to show what happened with those three factors in each of the last 3 years to help show the differences and what really caused, you know, what happened in 2019 versus what's happening to cause what we're seeing this year in 2021. So if you look at the left column there for 2019, we had record high flows coming from Lake Erie. We also had a pretty darn wet spring in terms of precipitation. And then, as Ken mentioned, the Ottawa freshet was incredible, and they actually set records in terms of how much water was flowing through the Ottawa River. So those three factors, with two of them being all-time record highs, were really what drove the record water levels that we saw in 2019. In 2020, we still had a lot of water coming from Lake Erie, right? Lake Erie doesn't change that quickly, so the amount of water we get from it doesn't change very quickly. But we had a relatively dry spring in the basin in terms of precipitation. And then the Ottawa freshet was a little bit above average, but not too far from average. So the system was really able to handle that pretty darn well in 2020. Even though Lake Erie was very high and sending us a lot of water, the other factors weren't really a problem. And we had a pretty decent year. High-ish, but certainly not flooding. So then we come to this year, and we saw a shift there with really the bottom two factors. Erie's still pretty high and sending us a lot of water, but we've had drought conditions, except for recently, across the Ontario basin, really going back well over a year. And then the Ottawa freshet, you know, kind of related to the Ontario basin not getting much precipitation, neither has the Ottawa basin. And so the Ottawa River freshet was really early, and it was far, far lower than average. So basically, there's just not much water coming from anywhere except for Erie. And that's what's really caused the low water conditions we've seen.
Thank you, Vince. Okay, so the reality rules here, water always wins. And you see in the upper box there, the whole seaway water system, hydrologic, can handle a wide range of water, which is sort of what Vince just summarized, but not all the combination of flows from Lake Erie, the Ontario basin, and the Ottawa River freshet. So flooding and massive shoreline damage can result if all three supply sources are high. And everybody said, well, the IJC just isn't doing a good enough job, the St. Lawrence River Board, really, of getting the water out. Impossible. No way. That was a perfect storm. Okay, now, see item 1 there, that's the flow out of the Great Lakes from Lake Erie. All of that can be accommodated, even very, very high flows, provided, number 2, that the precipitation in the Lake Ontario basin remains normal or dry, just like in the spring, summer of last year. And that the Ottawa River freshet is early enough and normal, like last year and again this year. So that's why everything was fine. So basically, between those 3 years, that demonstrates all these boundary truths about whether or not we're going to have high water or low water and how we deal with it. And one thing that makes a lot of people kind of uncomfortable is, well, why don't we just save the water and not send it down the river? It'll be all nice here in the river and on the lake and be right at average or whatever. Well, we can't do that. We can't do that and keep the seaway going. Because if we held all the water at the dam, you know, the freighters wouldn't be able to run. Heck, even large pleasure boats would have trouble. So why is that? We've got to have a minimum of outflow based on whatever the level is, a certain outflow required to keep the water levels high enough for safe navigation. We've got to put water in this trough because it's a controlled leak, just like the lubrication system on a boat engine. It's always leaking out, so you got to keep supplying more. And the reason is adequate flow is the only way to control level. It's not like a farm pond that you see with a board setting the level. No, it's flow. So the area from the Moses Saunders Dam and the power generation facility, from there past Montreal, if we didn't flow a lot of water, things would really get dry. The ships wouldn't be able to move, period. Okay, Vince, let's talk about the latest forecast.
Okay, thanks, Ken. So this was a forecast issued about a week ago. And the solid black line is the actual levels this year in 2021. And you can see they've kind of spiked up a bit recently in July. And we're getting a lot closer to that dotted blue line, which represents the long-term average. Going forward, you can see there's a fairly narrow band of possible levels going forward, depending on if we're wetter than average or drier than average or right at average. But over time, it looks like we're going to get pretty close to the long-term average, assuming we get average water supplies, precipitation. So if we jump to the next slide. So looking back in time, water levels were pretty flat for almost a couple months through May and close to the end of June. We were really bouncing around within a 1 or 2 inch range. But what happened from there is, I think as a lot of us have experienced, we kind of switched from a drought to extreme precipitation. We have just had a lot of rain. It's been across a lot of parts of New York and Canada. We're just getting a lot of precipitation now. And the result is the water level went up a heck of a lot. It's been up about 5.5 inches since the end of June. And we're now, we say only, quote unquote, only 6 inches below average. We were at some point around 14 inches below average. So we're getting a new peak almost every day at this point. So we haven't really peaked yet. And it's pretty rare that we're peaking this late in July. It's not unprecedented, but it's not very common. What is unprecedented is how much the water level has risen in July. Since the seaway went in, the water has never gone up this much in July, that 5.5 inches or so. And like I said earlier, as we continue through the season, we're kind of nudging closer and closer to average, which I think we would all welcome versus the very low water we've been seeing. Okay, if we jump to the next slide. So I mentioned we've gotten a lot of rain. So Ken will talk more about the picture here, but on the right, you see the Lake Ontario Basin. For July through July 22nd, the basin, and that the basin including the parts of Canada and the US that are in the Lake Ontario Basin, had received 4.84 inches of rain in July. The average for the entire month of July is 3.15 inches. So we've got 10 days to go from that data point, and we had already received 150% of the normal rain for the entire month. So it's been incredibly wet. Ken?
Okay, the precipitation ranges, I'm speaking right here on the far right. If you look at this bar chart, the precipitation in the whole area around Lake Ontario in the river is running between 150% and 300% of normal for the last 30 days. That's huge. And if you look for the purples and the blues all along the river, all along Lake Ontario, along Lake Erie, and so forth. And even up in the Michigan Upper Peninsula, you can just see lots of purples and blues. So an interesting example that Vince came up with is as of the 22nd of July, a couple of days ago, Lake Ontario has had 227% of the average rain, while Lake Superior, if you look at the top left corner there, you see those reds and oranges and tans. They are at 23% of average. They've only had a half an inch of rain in the last 30 days up in that region. So that's the end of the water levels presentation, question and answers. Short ones, we'll take a couple here, but if you've got anything in depth, please email us at the Thousand Island Association Gmail account, Thousand Island Association at gmail.com. Attention to the Water Levels Committee, and we'll answer them in writing or even give you a call or recruit you for the Water Levels Committee. Thank you very much.